Welcome to Kidmissing TV. I am your host, Angelina Wilson. Once again, there'll be no poster because this is basically a crime against women and children, really. There was a drug used in Europe, Canada. I think it was used in Australia too. But one lady doctor from the United States blocked it being approved by our FDA, Federal Drug Administration. Thank goodness. In the late 50s and early 1960s. The drug was called thalidomide. Now, I did some research as well as watching it on History and Hearsay and watching documentaries about it before. And she said something very interesting. Thalidomide, and there is another drug, I can't remember what it is, that it has two parts, an S part and an R part. And you can take the bad part out and give only the good part of one of the drugs. Thalidomide, however, even if you take the bad part out, the good part is made into the bad part by the human body. So, it was introduced in 1957 as a tranquilizer and was later marketed by the German pharmaceutical company Chemie Grünenthal under the trade name Contergan as a medication for anxiety, trouble sleeping, tension, and morning sickness. It was never tested on pregnant women to find out if it was harmful. It was removed from the market in 1961, so it was only on the market for a few years. Ciba, a Swiss pharmaceutical, in 1953 developed the drug as a tranquilizer, but they had given it up. And in 1954, when they abandoned the product, it was acquired by German pharmaceutical company Chemie Grünenthal. The company had been established by Hermann Wirtz, a Nazi Party member after World War II, as a subsidiary of the families Maurer and Wirtz Company. Their company was supposed to be making antibiotics, developing antibiotics. Their chemist escaped prosecution for Nazi war crimes. His name was Heinrich Mückter. Headed the development program. Because of his experience researching and producing an anti-typhus vaccine for Nazi Germany, he hired Martin Daimler, a medical doctor and leading proponent of the Nazi eugenics program. We've talked about eugenics. I will put that video up here. I forgot to do that in the other video, on the other channel, which I will go back and do. No, on this channel. The last video I said I was going to put it up, and I couldn't remember what I said. But as a refresher, eugenics was basically a survival of the fittest theory and also a theory in racism and anti-Semitism. Didn't believe that black people, Jewish people, handicapped people should be able to reproduce. Thus, they pass on their inferior genes. Please. He also hired Heinz Baumkotter, the chief medical officer at the Sachsenhausen concentration camp, and Otto Ambros, a chemist and Nazi war criminal. There are rumors that the drug may have been tested in concentration camps, but if they only got the drug in 1954, that's highly unlikely. Over 2,000 babies were born in the United Kingdom alone between 1958 and 1961 with defects, and around half died within a few months. 466 of them survived to at least 2010. Distillers Biochemicals, who were the drug distributor, paid out approximately £28 million in compensation following a legal battle. The British Thalidomide Children's Trust was set up in 1973 as a part of a $20 million legal settlement between Distillers Company and 429 children with thalidomide-related disabilities. When another company merged with them called Grand Metropolitan and Guinness, who had taken over the distillers in 1990, they made a long-term financial commitment to support the Thalidomide Trust and its beneficiaries. And the government of the United Kingdom gave survivors a grant of $20 million to be distributed through the trust. In Spain, things were awful. Australia and New Zealand a Dr. McBride has been given the credit for raising concern about it, but it was actually a midwife that worked for him that brought it to his attention. Her name was Sister Pat Sparrow. German pediatrician Widlukend Lenz, we'll just call him Dr. Lenz, also suspected the link and actually did the research to prove the link. Good for him. The doctor in Australia got a prize, but he was later removed from the medical register in 1993 related to work on another drug called Debendox. I'm not sure what that drug is. Further animal studies showed continued to show fetal abnormalities. There was a class action lawsuit in New Zealand and Australia. She was awarded millions. And the Supreme Court of Victoria endorsed a settlement of $89 million Australian to 107 victims of the drug in Australia and New Zealand. It was never approved for use in East Germany, which was the good side of Germany, I guess. These abnormalities were called dysmelia. It means dysmelia, meaning without limbs, or the limbs were deformed in some way. $2,500 babies were born in West Germany with thalidomide, easy for me to say, not so much, related abnormalities. And it was sold to pharmacies in Canada until 1962. I actually saw a doctor and his son, his youngest child that had been born with thalidomide effects in Canada. And he was the Canadian doctor that said, hey, wait a minute. Because I guess he did a little research and found thalidomide completely changed the way that Canada looks at drugs as it pertains to pregnancy, and their use therein. And of course, in the U.S., the FDA refused approval for it, as mentioned, thanks to Frances Oldham Kelsey. Oh, she wasn't a doctor, she was a pharmacologist. Richardson Merrill Pharmaceuticals wanted to bring it to the United States. "17 children were still born in the United States with effects from thalidomide because the drug was given as a clinical trial, and there were 2.5 million tablets floating around the United States." President Kennedy gave pharmacist Kelsey the President's Award for Distinguished Federal Civilian Service at a ceremony in 1962. In 2010, the FDA gave out the first Kelsey Award in her honor. 50 years after she first reviewed the application as a new medical officer at the Food and Drug Administration, from William S. Merrill. And yes, Merrill still exists. A cardiologist named Dr. Tossing found out about the damaging effects of thalidomide on newborns, and in 1967 testified before Congress on the matter after a trip to Germany, where she worked with infants with phocomelia, severe limb deformity, As a result of her efforts, thalidomide was banned in the United States and Europe. Austria was very strict, and therefore they had very few issues with thalidomide babies because they just didn't allow it very much. So they were very strict about prescriptions. And there is a thalidomide memorial in Cardiff, Wales. Let me try to show you the picture of that. I can't show you the pictures of the babies because they're naked. They also had congenital defects of the ear, heart, or other internal organs. Grünenthal was actually, the company was charged in 1968 in Germany with negligent homicide for all the dead babies. However, the Grünenthal settled with their victims in April of 1970, and the trial ended in December of 1970 with no finding of guilt. They paid 100 million Deutschmarks into a special foundation. The West German government added 320 million Deutschmarks. The foundation paid victims a one-time sum of 2,500 to 25,000 Deutschmarks, depending on severity of disability, and a monthly stipend of 100 to 450 Deutschmarks. The government now pays the stipend, and they've raised it considerably as the foundation has run out of money. Although Grünenthal paid another 50 million euros into the foundation in 2008. That's how many victims they have. The president of Grünenthal, Harold F. Stock, who was chief executive of the company from January 2009 to May 2013, apologized for the first time for producing the drug and remaining silent about the birth defects. He actually unveiled a statue of a disabled child to honor the children that were harmed. I don't hold anything against him. He had absolutely nothing to do with it. And apologized that the company didn't try to reach out to victims for over 50 years. There were 5,000 to 6,000 people still living with thalidomide-related birth defects at that time. Advocates for the victim said it was insulting and too little too late. Well, it was all he could do, really. Oh, come on. In 2023, in November of 2023, the Australian government announced its intention to make a formal apology to people affected by thalidomide with the unveiling of a national memorial site. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese described the thalidomide tragedy as a dark chapter in Australian history, and Health Minister Mark Butler said, "While we cannot change the past or end the physical suffering, I hope these important next steps of recognition and apology will help heal some of the emotional wounds." Drug studies are better now because of it. Oh, come off it. Anyway. Yeah, there's no definitive proof that it was ever tested in death camps. And since they got the drug from the Swiss in 1954, that's well after the death camps. The fact that Nazi doctors went ahead with putting it out there, and all the doctors that were hired in that drug company were neo-Nazis, tells you all you need to know about the scruples of that company at that particular time in history. They didn't care one way or the other and didn't test to see because they didn't care. The drug killed over 10,000 children in Europe. There is a book that came out by Jennifer Vanderbes, Wonder Drug, The Secret History of Thalidomide in America and Its Hidden Victims. And Maryland, the United States, skipped animal testing altogether. They're now Richardson Vicks. And instead distributed millions of pills to tens of thousands of Americans through clinical trials. Handouts offered by doctors. Yeah, so you definitely want to read her book. I will put that in the links in the description. There is a website also, the National Thalidomide Survivors and Their Families Recognition Site. Oh, that's a place. But there's probably stuff online too. I think there is actually. Then there's the Thalidomide Group of Australia. I'm glad they have so many. They also spread it to Africa, where it also harmed many, many babies. They don't really talk about that too much. Gruenthal's 1954 thalidomide patent lied, saying the drug had already been tested on humans and was safe. Now, there is an author named Carlos de Napoli, an Argentinian author of at that time upcoming book on Nazi scientists, has claimed to have found a document which reveals thalidomide had its origins in Hitler's laboratories in Germany. There is absolutely no doubt of the Nazi development and experimentation with thalidomide in the World War II camps, he was quoted as saying. I'm not sure. Could they have actually gotten it from the Swiss earlier? Will the Swiss show documentation that they sold it to Germany? We don't know. More than 100 Canadian babies. In 2015, Canada announced a compensation package for thalidomide victims, including a lump sum payment and a fund for medical expenses. We in the United States are very lucky. I'm sorry our friends to the north weren't so lucky. But we are very lucky. Now, about the concentration camps, I'm not sure. I mean, the fact that it was all Nazi doctors at that drug company makes you wonder if maybe the whole Swiss thing was just set up to hide the fact that that's where it came from. We don't know, because I'm sure there isn't documentation on it, unfortunately. So, let me know what you think. Thank you for joining me. God bless you. Please subscribe. Sorry. I'm trying to get to 500 by the 4th of July. Bye, guys.